Rachel Mellon was born in October 1982 and resided in Bolingbrook, Illinois, where she attended B.J. Ward Middle School. Academically, she excelled, achieving impressive grades and earning a place on the honors list. However, her home environment presented a stark contrast, marked by a troubling history of abuse throughout her childhood. Her parents, Jeff and Amy Skemp, separated when Rachel was under 3 years old. By 1985, Amy had entered a new relationship with a man named Vincent Mellon, who took on the responsibility of raising Rachel as his own, resulting in her hyphenated surname, Mellon Skemp. Soon after, Amy and Vincent welcomed 2 additional children, a son, Jason, born in 1988, and a daughter, Ashley, born in 1990. Despite the family's outwardly positive image, the reality behind closed doors was far more sinister than anyone outside could fathom. Rachel endured a harrowing upbringing, facing unimaginable horrors at the hands of her parents, particularly from her seemingly benevolent stepfather. A living monster. Amy and Vincent had been in a relationship for approximately 5 years when Vincent's true nature began to emerge. To the casual observer, he appeared to be an ordinary individual, someone who would not elicit a second glance. However, for Rachel and the rest of the family, thoughts of him consumed their minds throughout the day, primarily due to their fear. They were apprehensive about his volatile temperament. Vincent was akin to a ticking time bomb, poised to explode. The year was 1990 when the dynamics within the family began to shift. During an argument over an unspecified issue, Vincent's anger escalated with each passing moment. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, a sensation he was all too familiar with, he forced Amy toward the staircase of their residence and pushed her down. Amy fell, but fortunately, her injuries were not severe. Once she had recuperated, she promptly approached the police to obtain a restraining order against Vincent, which was seemingly granted. However, it was not long before Amy chose to reconcile with Vincent and subsequently withdrew the charges against him. While I cannot endorse her decision, it was ultimately hers to make. As anticipated, their rekindled relationship was short-lived, and Vincent swiftly extinguished any hope for a fresh start by resuming his abusive behavior, now directing his aggression toward Rachel as well. Vince soon reverted to his previous behaviors and began issuing threats against both Amy and Rachel. It appeared that, despite his assurances to Amy, he never genuinely accepted Rachel as his daughter and consistently maintained a distance from her, using her as a bargaining chip during their disputes. By 1995, Rachel had reached her breaking point. At the age of 12, she decided to run away from home. She continued to flee until she arrived at a friend's residence. However, she did not enter the house and seemingly did not even knock on the door. Instead, she found a secure spot outside where she spent the night, waiting until morning to contact her grandparents for assistance. Her grandparents arrived and took her back home, returning her to the care of her unfeeling abuser. Later that summer, Rachel was permitted to spend a few weeks with her biological father, who had relocated to Texas. While there, she implored her uncle to let her move to Dallas. It seems she did not fully disclose the gravity of her situation to him, as he likely would have intervened had he been aware of the extent of her suffering. Regrettably, her entreaties went unheeded. Despite Rachel's fervent pleas, she ultimately had no choice but to return home to live with her mother and the living nightmare she referred to as her stepfather. Her final days in the autumn of 1995, Rachel commenced her 7th year at B.J. Ward Middle School. She enjoyed considerable popularity among her peers, and to an outsider, she appeared to be a young girl who possessed everything one could desire. She was an exemplary student with commendable grades, a multitude of friends, and an ever-present smile. However, only her closest companions were aware of the shadows that loomed over her home life. Rachel's dearest friend, Carrie, recalls her as a beacon of joy and vitality, seemingly impervious to sorrow. In the months leading up to this period, Rachel had developed a keen interest in recycling and environmental conservation, and she had also begun to explore the realms of music and dance. Her academic and social experiences were flourishing, yet her domestic situation was on the verge of a distressing shift. A few months later, in January 1996, Carrie discovered Rachel in tears by her locker. This was an unprecedented occurrence. No one had ever witnessed the usually cheerful girl in such despair. When several friends inquired about her distress, Rachel remained tight-lipped. She merely stated that she was unwell and had a personal issue she intended to resolve on her own, effectively shutting her friends out and refusing to provide further details. This marked the final occasion anyone would see Rachel. Following her departure from school that day, she did not return. The next day, she reported feeling unwell due to a sore throat, and subsequently, she disappeared. The event took place on January 31, 1996. Rachel was at home with her stepfather, Vince, who had been out of work for some time. It was an exceptionally cold winter day, with temperatures plummeting to around -20 degrees, accompanied by strong winds and snow flurries. Rachel and her stepfather found themselves effectively snowed in, with no options for leaving the house. At approximately 10:45 that morning, Rachel made a phone call to her grandmother to express her gratitude for the Christmas gifts she had recently received. While it is not definitively known, it seems this conversation was with her maternal grandmother, Lucy. This assumption arises from the fact that, towards the end of the call, Lucy observed that Rachel had become unusually quiet. Sensing something was amiss, Lucy inquired, "Is he there?" in reference to Vince. Rachel simply responded with yes, and shortly thereafter indicated that she needed to end the call. According to Vince, after hanging up, Rachel and he played Nintendo for a while. About an hour later, he stated that Rachel chose to retire to her room for a nap, dressed in yellow pants, red slippers, and a pink sweatshirt. She enveloped herself in a blue blanket, leaped onto her bed, and fell asleep. This was reportedly the last occasion anyone saw Rachel, yet her narrative only becomes more convoluted and unsettling from this point onward. A person of interest at approximately 2:30 p.m., Vince states that he checked on Rachel and observed that she was still asleep. The subsequent events unfold from Vince's perspective, outlining the details he communicated to the police later that day. Vince mentions that after checking on Rachel, he departed the residence to take the dog for a walk. It is important to note that the temperature was -20 degrees, accompanied by strong winds and significant snowfall. He claims that, in spite of these harsh conditions, he walked the dog for a full 30 minutes before returning home. However, on his way back, their German shepherd, Duke, spotted a rabbit darting through a nearby field. Vince recounts that Duke managed to slip out of his collar and bolted after the rabbit, and he did not attempt to retrieve Duke's leash. He simply walked away, leaving him behind and venturing into the unknown. Vince stated that he believed Duke would eventually find his way home later that day, but that did not occur. Vince arrived home around 3 p.m. that afternoon. He mentioned that he did not take the time to check on Rachel. Instead, he continued with his usual activities. By 3:15, Rachel's younger sister had come home from school and quickly realized that Rachel was absent from her room. Her sister inquired about Rachel, but Vince showed no concern. It remains unclear whether he fabricated an excuse or was genuinely indifferent, but in any case, Vince did not search for her. Several hours later, a real estate agent happened to be in the vicinity when she spotted a dog running in a field near the Mellon residence. Recognizing the dog as Duke, she promptly called him over and returned him to his family. This occurred sometime between 4:30 and 5 p.m. Around the same time, Amy, Rachel's mother, came home with her son, Jason. Upon discovering Rachel's absence, Amy immediately contacted the police to initiate an investigation. The evidence, a forewarning, this case is about to take a very dark turn. As you are aware, I will refrain from delving into overly graphic details, but the implications will be unmistakably clear. Upon the arrival of law enforcement at the family's residence a few hours later, they initiated their investigation by examining Rachel's bedroom. It quickly became apparent that the situation was unusual. The evidence left behind, in conjunction with the information provided by Vince, did not align coherently. There was an unmistakable sense that something was amiss, and the police were resolute in their pursuit of the truth. They uncovered several critical pieces of evidence suggesting that Rachel had been abducted. Notably, her coat, shoes, wallet, purse, and Sony Walkman were all absent items that Rachel typically carried with her at all times, regardless of her destination. Moreover, on a night with temperatures plummeting to -20 degrees, it raised questions as to why Rachel would have left her coat and shoes behind. Additionally, the blue blanket she usually kept on her bed was missing, along with 2 of her cherished pillows. Alarmed by these missing belongings, the officers inspected the front door and found no indications of forced entry. Vince stated that he had left the door unlocked when he took the dog for a walk. This detail could potentially explain the lack of damage to the door if someone had entered while he was away. However, investigators soon observed something peculiar. Vince's arms bore scratch marks, some of which appeared to be quite severe. When the detectives inquired about the origin of the marks on his body, he explained that he had been working on a car earlier that day and had sustained scrapes and cuts while reaching into the engine compartment. In my opinion, this explanation lacks credibility. As someone who frequently engages in vehicle maintenance, it is not unusual to experience minor injuries such as bumps, scrapes, and bruises. However, these minor injuries do not align with the severe scratches and cuts reported on Vince's arms. The police conducted a thorough search of the area, utilizing both ground and aerial resources, yet no evidence of her presence was discovered. They even checked with local airports to determine if she had attempted to book a flight to Dallas to visit her father, but their investigation yielded no leads. This is where the narrative takes a disturbing turn regarding Vince. For those who have experienced abuse, I want to caution you that the following details may be triggering, so you may wish to skip ahead. It is important to note that Vince harbored feelings for Rachel that went beyond the bounds of a typical stepfather-stepdaughter relationship. The police initiated an investigation into Rachel's room and quickly discovered her diary. She frequently documented her thoughts and feelings, detailing her experiences and the abuse she endured. One particular entry deeply unsettled the officers, as it disclosed various crimes committed against her by her father. Rachel recounted an incident from August 1995, when Vince entered her room and began to kiss her, among other inappropriate actions. In her diary, Rachel noted that Vince claimed he was teaching her about the behavior of predators so she could learn to protect herself. However, it was clear that there was no escaping her stepfather. Additionally, the authorities uncovered a rare book titled Daddy Kisses, which discusses father-daughter relationships, a term that fails to capture the gravity of the situation. Most disturbingly, the police found a knife hidden beneath Rachel's pillow. While editing this video, I recalled a detail shared by a viewer named Ashley McCoy, who noted that Drew Peterson was one of the lead investigators on this case, serving with the Bolingbrook Police Department. Drew Peterson has a troubling past. He has been married 4 times and is currently incarcerated for the murder of his 3rd wife. Furthermore, his 4th wife has been missing and has never been located. This context is important, as there are rumors circulating online suggesting that the detective may have had a friendship with Rachel's stepfather. I have not yet discovered any evidence to substantiate this claim. However, it is a rumor that has been prevalent for some time. I am reluctant to assign blame without certainty, yet the implications of this situation are quite grave. At 6 p.m. on the evening Rachel went missing, Carrie, her closest friend, learned of the distressing news. She quickly assembled a group of school friends to inform them of the situation, and together they set out to search for Rachel. They braved the harsh cold for over an hour, desperately looking for their friend, but their efforts yielded no results. They scoured the nearby streets and parks, yet Rachel had seemingly disappeared without a trace. Carrie recalls that in that moment, the group huddled together, tears streaming down their faces as they came to the heartbreaking realization that their friend was truly gone, though they held on to hope that she was not lost forever. Around the same time, Jeff Skemp, Rachel's biological father, received the alarming call informing him of his daughter's disappearance. He immediately resigned from his job and boarded the first flight to Illinois to assist in the search. Although Jeff had not been present during much of Rachel's upbringing, he was the father she had always needed, unlike Vince. By the time he reached the home of Amy and Vince, there was little that could be accomplished. He went to Rachel's room, lay down on her bed, and took her Walkman, placing the headphones on before pressing play. Rachel had been enjoying her favorite song, Hand in My Pocket. She had expressed her fondness for it during the summer she spent with her father just a few months prior. Jeff recounted that while visiting Rachel's home, he confronted Vince regarding the incident. According to Jeff, Vince's only explanation was that Rachel must have been abducted while he was out walking the dog. Vince appeared to be largely indifferent to the situation. Since that day in 1996, Jeff has maintained the same phone number, hoping that Rachel might eventually reach out, but she never did. In January 2000, a grand jury successfully obtained a warrant to collect DNA samples from Vince. On January 29, law enforcement apprehended Vince at his residence and held him in custody for over 9 hours, during which they interrogated him and collected the required samples. Throughout the questioning, Vince declined to answer many inquiries related to Rachel's disappearance. Ultimately, he was compelled to provide DNA and hair samples, and the police officially initiated an investigation into him on suspicion of first-degree murder. This inquiry was initiated following the emergence of rumors suggesting that Rachel might have been pregnant, potentially with Vince as the father. However, in the absence of Rachel's whereabouts, there is no concrete evidence to substantiate this claim. Nevertheless, the contents of Rachel's diary raise significant concerns, and personally, I find this theory quite plausible. Vince underwent a lie detector test, which he did not pass. Subsequently, Amy was also interrogated by the authorities, but she did not perceive any reason to suspect Vince's involvement. This could be attributed to her deep affection for him or her intimate knowledge of his character. Despite his imperfections, she believed he was not capable of murder. In my opinion, I find that assertion hard to accept. Amy also took a lie detector test and passed. However, following this, both she and Vince have declined to assist the police with the investigation, which was an unexpected development. Furthermore, both have chosen not to hold any memorial services for Rachel. It was not until 2002 that the city of Bolingbrook took the initiative to honor Rachel by planting a tree and installing a plaque directly across from her former residence. Moreover, the Bolingbrook Police Department has explicitly stated their belief that Vince is responsible for his daughter's murder. However, without the discovery of her body, they are unable to file charges against him. Both Jeff and Carrie have positioned themselves as key figures in this ongoing investigation. Since 1996, Amy and Vince have declined to offer any assistance. However, Jeff and Carrie have not forgotten Rachel's disappearance. They persist in their efforts to raise awareness, with the hope that justice will eventually be served, whether that means Vince being apprehended or identifying Rachel's actual abductor, should Vince be exonerated. The Bolingbrook Police Department continues to treat the case of Rachel Mellon Skemp as an active investigation. If you possess any information regarding Rachel's situation, no matter how minor, it is urged that you contact the Bolingbrook Police at 630 226 600. Wherever Rachel may be, it is my sincere hope and prayer that she has finally attained the peace she has long sought.